The first year was absolute hell for me. Absolute hell. But I'm so glad that I stuck through it, because there have been such amazing insights and learnings from being an entrepreneur after having been in a career.
Welcome to the Alphapreneurs podcast. I'm your host, Rayhan Aleem, founder of Taxstar and Alpha Pro Partners. Join me on each episode as we talk to inspiring Dubai-based entrepreneurs who share their stories, challenges, and secrets on building world-class businesses. I'm pleased to welcome Dhiren Bhatia to the show today. After working for 11 years as an IT director at an international bank, he moved to Dubai to set up 𝗨𝗪𝗏𝗏 Technologies, a technology consulting company serving retail businesses. He then set up the Elevated Entrepreneur, a coaching movement which empowers business owners to break free from daily operations to become a part-time CEO. Dhiren, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today. Known you for 8 odd years now.
Yeah.
7 years, long time.
Long time. Thanks for having me.
No, it's my pleasure, and you're one of the guests I really want to bring onto the show.
Thank you.
I want to dive into it. I want to talk about your transition from an employee to an entrepreneur. So some of the themes that we talk about in this podcast is, we want to encourage people out there who are thinking about being an entrepreneur, but they don't really make that move or push themselves to it. So someone like yourself who's, jumped from an employee to an entrepreneur, I'm fascinated to know about that journey and what you were thinking about during that journey. And so you was actually an IT director of a large international bank in Canada, and you moved to Dubai to set up 𝗨𝗪𝗏𝗏. You've had subsequent businesses afterwards. But what made you become an entrepreneur? What was going through your head when you was having to go from a stable income, well-paid job to a unstable job, potentially lucrative, but you just don't always know where the next, payment is coming from?
Yeah, I've had my fair share of sleepless nights, but thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here. Now I'm jumping straight into it. I think talking about wanting to move from a career to entrepreneurship is like taking this very big leap of faith. And when I moved here about 8 years ago now, it wasn't intended. I wasn't intending to start a business. I came here thinking that I would work, make some more money, and then head back home to Toronto. But life had a very different plan. And about 8 months into my move here, I decided to start my own business because I was just not finding a job that would work for me. And initially I started that business as a challenge. I figured I'd see how far I could take it. And I was sharing with you just before we started recording that the first year was absolute hell for me. Absolute hell. But I'm so glad that I stuck through it, because there have been such amazing insights and learnings from being an entrepreneur after having been in a career. And you're right, the salary bit, of course, doesn't cut it, because the first few years, you worry about your own salary, you worry about your staff salaries, you worry about making payments to vendors. So, of course, you don't see a very pretty penny coming your way for a long time. But like I said, it's been a hell of a ride. It's been amazing. And what was going through my mind when I made that jump? It was a challenge. It was a challenge to myself. I promised myself that I would give it my best shot before I decided to go back. And how 𝗨𝗪𝗏𝗏 came to be was really a marriage of the two things that I knew really well. I knew IT because I started my career in IT. I graduated from an IT degree. And I grew up in a retail family. I grew up in a family that ran a retail business. In fact, my parents had a retail business that my mom started in the 90s. So I sort of grew into an entrepreneurial household. So business wasn't new, but I figured if I was to do something, I'd do something that excites me and that I know very well. So I did the IT bit, and I figured I'd bring the retail bit into it. And so that's how 𝗨𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 was born. And 𝗨𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 is this idea that retailers need a helping hand when it comes to IT and how to make better decisions. Because I saw my parents struggle when they ran a retail business. It was very gut. It was very top of the day kind of mood kind of business. It wasn't very data driven. It wasn't very strategic. And so the idea behind 𝗨𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏 was to solve that problem for other retailers so they didn't end up making the same mistakes.
Nice. So for you, similar to me, I'm a qualified accountant. My business is accounting, 𝗵𝗵𝗺 Partners anyway. And I went into that. So I guess, in your situation, because you knew IT, because that was your area of expertise and you was an IT director, plus your family was in the retail business in Dubai, we'll touch upon that. It made sense. You got your expertise together to the two, to two verticals, technology, retail, to form a business that, that can help others. And I guess for a lot of entrepreneurs, sometimes it's not thinking about setting up a restaurant or, doing an e-commerce website. Sometimes it's looking within yourself to see what you can offer and providing that value to other people. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, and as you were saying, I think a lot of businesses start from this notion that for example, I'm an IT guy, so I figured I would do something in IT. So I think they say that you want to do a business in what you know best. To your point, that's exactly what I did. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs do the same. And so for people that are looking to make the jump from bring in a career, a very high paying career, especially here, and wanting to start a business, I feel the first thing that they would need to look into is what excites them, what gives them the motivation to get out of bed, what's their passion, because that's probably where they're going to succeed, because the first few years are going to be rough. But it's that passion and that motivation to do something better in their field of interest is what's going to keep them going.
So Dhiren, you come from a family of entrepreneurs who actually set up a business in Dubai. You obviously went to Canada. You studied out there. You had a very successful career out there, and then you came back. And obviously, you mentioned that you set up a business here while you was looking for work, but you couldn't find the right role. But the opportunity of setting up a business was probably, in my view, the best decision that you made. There's many people who do come from a family of entrepreneurs, and there's some individuals who don't. So you coming from a background of entrepreneurs, how did that help you in your journey being an entrepreneur?
Honestly, I wanted to not be an entrepreneur, because when you grow up in a family of entrepreneurs, especially if, like in my case, my parents were of course both partners in life, but also partners in business. I grew up seeing a very different side of entrepreneurship, the constant bickering and the constant fighting. So the reason why I actually wanted to move to Canada was to get away from that. I swore to myself that I would never do business, and I would go do something different, and I'd get into a career. And but like I said earlier, like life had a very different plan for me. But I think after having started a business, I do look back upon the experience that I garnered from that life in a family of entrepreneurs. Like I remember from a very early age going to the store, being with my mom at the store after school, even doing homework at the store while my mom did her thing at the store, because she was really passionate about that idea, and which was a fashion jewelry business back in the 90s. So it was obvious that we would all help her out. So we'd go to school, we'd come back from school, and we'd go straight to the store. This is in Abu Dhabi in the late 90s. And I remember that I'd be doing homework and then helping her pack an item, and then going back to doing homework, and then going back to doing some store stuff around the store. I feel that experience definitely helped set me up to understand that entrepreneurship isn't easy. And I say in my coaching business that hustle culture will teach you. Otherwise, hustle culture will teach you, oh, it's super easy to start your own business. It's the best thing. It's freedom everywhere. The truth of the matter is it's very, very different. It's very, very difficult to be an entrepreneur coming from hustle culture, because this is a long game. This is a super long game. In fact, in many ways, there's a gentleman named Simon Sinek who talks about this being an infinite game. Entrepreneurship is an infinite game. And to round off and come back to your question about how did that help me, I think it prepared me for the fact that this is going to be a long game, and that there's going to be a lot of blood, sweat, and tears put into this thing to make it work. And so, yeah, that's, I think, how I came about learning from that experience.
But I think ultimately it's in your blood. I mean, you tried to run away from it, or you tried to push yourself away from entrepreneurship, but like it sucked you in, right?
It's a good question. I see what you're saying, and I think as I'm reflecting aloud, I think there was part of me that sort of challenged myself to do it better. than my parents did, I figured I thought I could do it better. And I thought to myself, maybe if I started it, I'd maybe prove a point to my parents that not all businesses have to be about constant bickering and constant stress. Because I saw my parents, they spent numerous nights sleepless. They would stress about it all the time. In fact, even when they traveled for business, it was such a rush thing. They never really got to enjoy that. And so I guess along the way, when I started my business, I figured I'd do it different. I figured I'd do it better. So I guess it's in my blood, but I also think that there was this part of me that was competitive and wanted to challenge myself to do it different, to do it better.
So Dhiren, you work with numerous F&B concepts, retail as well. A lot of them are very household, well-known brands. A lot of them are, mom and pop shops based in Dubai, internationally as well. You obviously provide technology for them to help them improve their businesses. Now, for the entrepreneur who's got an F&B concept or who's in retail and they're looking to innovate and adapt, and they need to kind of keep up with the pace of change that's happening all the time, whether it's digital marketing, whether it's making sure they've got the right products, understanding what the latest trends are. From your experience and your knowledge of working with some of these, concepts and brands, what would you say would help them to keep up pace with technology and the latest trends?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a story about how my wife and I started a retail brand in Toronto before I answer your question, because I think it's germane to this conversation. So my parents were visiting once in 2007, and they said to me, son, you both work, you both, are salaried, why don't you try starting a business? And by default, it was obviously always going to be a retail business because they ran a retail business and they saw me doing that. So I was all excited and I started a retail business. And I was saying to you off camera that those 4 years that we ran that business was a very, very hard time for my wife and I, because we were newly married and we had just started this business and we had absolutely no clue what we were doing as entrepreneurs. Or the reason I share the story is, as a retailer, it's easy to start a retail business. It's easy to start an F&B concept, especially in this market. There is such a big attraction to starting the next big retail brand or the next best F&B brand. But there's a lot that goes behind the scenes, starting with knowing who you're opening this for and what pain problem you can offer to the market, what pain problem transformation you can offer to the market. In our case, when we started that retail brand in Toronto, we had absolutely no idea why we were starting a retail brand. And of all places, we decided to start that in a mall. It was never done before. And we never even wondered why that wasn't done before. And the simple reason was it was extremely expensive. There wasn't that much demand. And that's why nobody else did it. But that's the lesson that I wanted to share, is start with really knowing your target market. It's easy to have a retail brand that does, in our case, it was doing jewelry and fashion, because we figured the more things we offer, the more customers we were going to attract. But retail and even F&B to a certain degree doesn't work that way. It needs to be very, very specific. It needs to be very niche. And in fact, the nicher the better. And something that I share a lot these days is you want to dig a hole that's a mile deep and an inch wide, as opposed to digging a hole that's a mile wide and an inch deep. And I don't mean this literally, but I mean this in the case of business. The narrower the concept, the better it is, because a lot of business gurus will tell you that the narrower, the deeper you get into that niche, the more money you stand to make. So if I was to go back and redo my own retail store that I started in Toronto, I probably would have not done it in a mall. I would have done it outside in a strip mall or something even out of my house. Road tested the idea, make sure there was enough demand. And I would have started with a very specific set of items, as opposed to, like 45 SKUs. I would have started with maybe 2 or 3 SKUs just to make sure there was enough demand and there was enough desire in the market to buy. So I guess to summarize my thought process in this conversation is, number one, be very clear on why you're starting that brand. Number two, be very clear on who you're starting this brand for. So if the answer to your question is, I'll do a retail brand for everybody who wants to buy clothing, you've lost the game before it started.
We get a lot of entrepreneurs like that.
Absolutely. And I think there's a new crop of entrepreneurs that come every day thinking, I'm just going to offer this set of products for everybody.
Yeah.
And therein is a fallacy. It doesn't work well. So you want to start that statement by saying, I'd like to offer X product for this kind of people who are tired of this problem. And then you know you have something really cool in your hand, at your hands. That would be my advice. And I think to sort of round that off, I was saying to you earlier, it's about the long game. Mistakes are going to happen. You're going to fail. You're not going to see success on day one. You're probably not going to see success on day 100. But if you stick with it long enough, you're going to see success. The mistake that my wife and I made, we gave up too soon. We had a lot of learnings in the first couple of years, but we didn't pull through with it. We should have pulled through with it. And I would ask anybody who's thinking of being an entrepreneur, who's starting a retail business, starting an F&B concept, prepare for the long run. Have enough cash on hand to make sure that you can survive the first few years, because those are the hardest. That's when you're figuring everything out. You're figuring out the sales, you're figuring out the delivery, you're figuring out the back office. And it, of course, is going to cost you to figure that out. And that's part of the process. It's designed to be that way. It's like they say, 2 steps backward to take 1 step forward. So that's the sort of advice I'd give to someone who's thinking of starting a retail brand. And just to add to that, I'd say invest in good tech. I see a lot of retailers as clients of ours at 𝗬𝗪𝗧𝗧 that tend to think of tech as a cost, and they don't tend to understand how that would give them return on investment. So the ask of anybody who's thinking of doing a retail business or a restaurant business is to invest in good tech, starting with a good inventory management system, starting with a good accounting system. And you don't have to go break the bank when you're thinking of systems. Start with the one that you can afford today, but don't make the mistake of not starting with one. Because I see a lot of retailers thinking, oh, we'll do this later. Or we think a lot of F&B guys thinking, yeah, we don't need a loyalty system right now. We don't need an accounting system right now, whatever that may be. Invest in something that you can afford and understand that upgrading is part of the process. So you will make mistakes with that system. You will learn. It's like getting a driver's license and buying a Ferrari out of the showroom, because it's never going to work, because you're going to total that car in very little time. But if you did buy a car, you'd learn how to handle it. You'd learn how to drive it. And then you could upgrade all along the way and make yourself up to a Ferrari. So invest in tech is something that I would also add to that piece of advice.
So Dhiren, you set up a successful technology consulting business, 𝗬𝗪𝗧𝗧𝗧, and then you kind of got the entrepreneur bug, and so you set up another business, which was the Elevated Entrepreneur, which you send out newsletters. I read those newsletters. They're really, informative. They're great. One of the things you talk about in your newsletters and in your content is this concept of a part-time CEO. And entrepreneurs, they kind of start businesses in the first place to kind of live the life. As you mentioned before, it's an infinite game, but their kind of intention to go into entrepreneurship is to kind of do it for 1 year and then relax. Someone else will handle it. And I've never seen anyone come up with a concept of how to do that until you came up with a part-time CEO, because that's where you really can. You set up a business, get all the processes in place, get the right people in place, and then you can manage it part-time. Do you want to just kind of divulge and give us a bit more of a tell us more about this part-time CEO concept and how an entrepreneur can get there? We mentioned how difficult it is to set up a business, but how would you, what kind of things would they need to do to get to that end point?
Yep, I get that. So it's funny about the part-time CEO, because when I started 𝗬𝗪𝗧𝗧𝗧 in 2017, after having started the retail brand in 2010, I figured I'd be chained to this business for life. I thought this was going to be it. And along the way, I realized there's a way out of this. And that's when I started working with my business coach. Her name's 𝗪𝗂𝗪. She happens to be someone that we both know very well. And she still today is one of my biggest supporters and helps me through a lot of my own limiting belief systems. But
we're going to bring 𝗪𝗪𝗪 one day. So
oh, brilliant. Brilliant. 𝗪𝗪𝗪 is one of those women that I have a lot of respect for. And she taught me a lot about business. And it's when I started speaking with her and coaching with her that I realized that there is a way out of this. And I call the infinite sort of loop. I call it the consultant's dilemma. And what I mean by that is there's this idea that a lot of us start a business with, but then we don't even realize that we've been caught in that loop. And that loop is this: you're starting a business, and you're going to go look for your first customer. And as soon as you find your first customer, you're going to find a team member that can deliver that service. And now that you've delivered that service and you've got this team member waiting, empty-handed, he's on the bench, and you want him to be busy, you're going to find your next customer. And as soon as you find more customers, you're starting to going to hire more people. And without you even knowing it, you've now been caught into this vicious loop where you're going to have to bring in more customers just to make sure that you can pay the salaries of all the staff members that you've hired.
Yeah.
And that is a really interesting place to be, because once you're in it, you don't know that you're in it. And when I was working with 𝗪𝗏, I realized that I myself was in that loop, because at 𝗏𝗏𝗏, at one point we were 9 people. And I thought to myself, there must be a better way of doing this. And as I was working with her, we talked a lot about this idea of scaling up. And true scale is not addition by addition. True scale is addition by subtraction, which means you need to be able to remove things from the equation to grow and to scale. So scale is not more volume and more people, more offices. Scale is when you can deliver that same product and service in the leanest form possible with the smallest team and still keep your revenue up. And so that took me few years to figure out my own self at 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. And as I was coaching with 𝗪𝗏, I realized that this is something that I would love to teach others. So I came up with this idea called the Elevated Entrepreneur Blueprint. And the Elevated Entrepreneur Blueprint is that very same system packaged into a format that a lot of entrepreneurs will find it easy to understand, which then gave birth to this idea of a part-time CEO. So I shared with you earlier that I grew up in a family where mom and dad were always talking shop. They were always talking work because that was their life. When I started my business with my wife, it was the same thing. When I started 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, it was the same thing. And I said to myself that which is ironic, because most people start a business to get away from a job, but we end up giving ourselves a second job. In fact, we end up becoming even worse at giving ourselves a job, because now this is even more strenuous, more harder, more longer hours. And we forget the dream. And the dream is to have the time to do the things you want to do with the people you want to do, when you want to do. And so a part-time CEO is a founder of a business that has got the understanding that they're caught in this consultant's dilemma, and they're now making their way out of that loop so that they can do the things they want with the people they want when they want, while the business continues to run itself. And there's a format to that, which I'm happy to get into. But that's sort of the impetus and the origin story of how this part-time CEO concept came to be.
And your concept of part-time CEO, it still means that the business runs, right? It still means that you're still part of the business, but I guess there's certain things that you would do that's important, and then there's certain things that you would step out of. Is that
100%? That's like absolutely it, and that's how 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 works today. I spend about 2 days of my time in a week on 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and the idea being that it runs by itself, it feeds itself. Of course, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, I still have to make some key decisions, but for the most part, the machine runs itself. And that's what we need to see our businesses as a machine that can operate in itself. And there's a very famous quote from a very famous author named Michael Gerber, who wrote the book 𝗍𝗵𝗏, and he talks about making your business systems dependent instead of people dependent. And once you've got your business to be systems dependent, you're on your way to becoming a part-time CEO, because that business can run itself. And I have to underline this conversation. Running itself doesn't mean that you're not going to be part of the conversation, or you're not going to be taking decisions, because that's something that a lot of us think that that's what an automated business is. Oh, I'm just going to walk away and it's going to sustain. It's like a plane flying by itself. It can for up until a certain point, but certain times manual overrides are needed. And so that's the journey of being a part-time CEO, where you start to build that system, those systems, the team, the process that allows this business to run by itself.
So I'm just going to ask you a few more questions about part-time CEO, because it's quite interesting for me as well. I meet entrepreneurs all the time, and I advise them in different capacities. So as a part-time CEO, one of the questions I have anyway is, when you set up a business, you're kind of like the face of the business, and to a certain extent you're the primary person to do the BD. Doesn't matter if you're Elon Musk or if you're someone just running a mom and pop store, you're still the face of the business. How does that relationship change as a part-time CEO? Are they still the face of the business, or how does that work?
I love that question. And there are some really good examples to get into. But just before we get into the examples, I want to talk about this idea that a very famous guy by the name of Dan Martell talks about. He has a book that says, the book's title is Buy Back Your Time. And he has this concept called the replacement ladder. As an entrepreneur, most of us want to hire a salesperson first. On the contrary, what you want to do is you want to hire an admin person first. Your first and foremost hire should be an admin person, because the amount of time that you and I and other entrepreneurs spend in calendar management, in email management, in phone management, in scheduling and logistics is insane. So taking that off your plate is item number one. Dan then talks about hiring a delivery person. Again, contrary to belief, a lot of entrepreneurs will still want to hire a salesperson. But like you said, nobody sells like us. Nobody sells like the founder. So it's about making sure that we continue to wear that hat while offloading all of the other pieces so that you can actually have time to sell. And I'll talk about that in a few more steps. But once you've hired the delivery person, when I say delivery, I'm not talking about logistics, but I'm talking about delivering the actual service.
Not the Uber guy who's going to
give you absolutely.
Lunch, right?
No, not that. But the person that's responsible, the team or the person that is responsible for delivering the service that the customer is paying for. If you're a creative agency, that's the actual branding, or the videographer, the videography service, or the consulting service. Hiring someone to do that allows the founder to become free of everything else, and they can focus on sales, because sales is one of the hardest things and the last things that you want to hand over. Because by the time that the business has grown to a point where you're ready to offload sales, you would have also developed a process of sales. A lot of founders make this mistake of hiring a salesperson right out of the gate, and the salesperson has absolutely no clue what to do and how to do. So they just end up making the same mistakes that they learned from their old business or the other business they were working for. So hire the admin person first, then bring in a delivery person. Now focus on sales, start developing a sales process. Now bring in a sales guy, and now you're free of sales. And the final replacement on that replacement ladder is your GM, your creative director, your right hand. And so as you make your way up from founder to CEO and then to part-time CEO, these are the people you need along the way to make that happen. And now coming back to your question about being the face of the company, if you look at some of the biggest brands in the world, the founders still happen to be the face. You had Tesla, you got Elon Musk. For the longest time, Apple's face was Steve Jobs. And I don't think that's by chance. I think that's by design.
Yep.
Because people want a hero to align with. It doesn't mean that Elon Musk is still selling Teslas and is still doing BD, but he is the face of the company. And I think that all founders should continue to be the face of the company, because your customer wants to align with you, your values, your ethos. And if you take the founder away from that, you stop the founder from being the face of the company, the customers don't have anything to align to, because it's no longer a business. It's a brand which is becoming faceless. So you will always want to be the face of the brand, having at the same time an understanding that you don't have to be the BD person just because you're the face of the company. You can have a sales team. A lot of the entrepreneurs that I coach these days will talk about, hey, well, you know what? My customer wants to talk to me and they don't want to do business with anybody else on my team. That's
common.
Very common.
Very common, yeah.
And it is true to a certain degree, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be the face of that conversation for the whole process. You want to be able to bring in your delivery person. You want to be able to bring in your salesperson and hand this customer to the right person on your team and let the customer know why you're handing this over. So if you were to sort of role play this out, if I've gotten a call, for example, I'm a financial advisor or a real estate broker. I've got a call from a customer saying, hey, look, I really want to talk to you. I've got your referral from somebody and I want to be able to talk about my finances. And now a financial advisor who's a new entrepreneur would say, oh my God, this is a customer. He's wanting to talk to me and he or she's going to invest the entire energy into dealing with this customer. What happens to everybody else? Every other customer is going to be left to the wayside. A good way to handle that is, sure, I'm so glad you called. Let me put you in touch with so-and-so on my team. They're really good in your kind of portfolio management. I'm going to connect you, set up a WhatsApp group. I'll be part of the group. I'll keep an eye out. but he's the right person to help me gather all the information I need to have our next conversation with you. If you do this in steps, what's happening is that your customer is developing the trust that you're giving them, that somebody else on your team can handle that conversation. And so by doing it in this manner, the person, the founder, gets out of the sales conversation, gets out of the delivery conversation, and you rinse and repeat this with all your customers, and slowly you find your way making your way to your part-time CEO status.
Yeah, no, that's a really good example, and I think that's for someone who is setting up a business and has so much going on. I think that breaks it down really well. So Dhiren, you've been quite impressive in your entrepreneur career. Initially, you had a technology consulting business, and that was quite successful as well. And then you've walked the walk, became a part-time CEO, and then you set up your coaching practice. Two very different businesses. In the beginning, we were talking about how you set up your consulting business, and that was, a merger of your background and your what you studied and your career. But now coaching is completely different, right? In terms of a tech, consulting business. So how have you transitioned from a technology entrepreneur to a coach, a coaching business that teaches other entrepreneurs, that gives guidance to other entrepreneurs to help them in their journey? I know that it's quite rewarding. Yes, it's a business, but you give back as well. But if someone wants to set up a second business, what kind of advice would you give? How did you go from a tech business to a consulting business? That's quite interesting for me anyway to learn about.
The two-word answer is very slowly. It's funny that you said I transitioned to being a coach. Can I share a story with you?
Of course.
So I remember telling my wife Shweta about my desire to be a coach. I discovered this passion in 2018, 2019 when I was working with 𝗪𝗏. And I said to myself, one day I'm going to be a coach. One day. And I remember sharing the story with Shweta, one day I'm going to be a coach. She said, why not now? I said to her, I don't think I'm fit enough to be a coach. I don't think I'm equipped enough to be a coach. And the reason I share this story is we all have such immense possibilities in ourselves. We had such immense passions in ourselves. And very few of us actually get to live out those passions. The first thing is, if you are thinking of starting a second business, or even if it's your first business, really be true to yourself. And as you and I are talking, there's this really beautiful quote right behind you that says, stay simple, stay true. Hustle culture will make you believe that you don't need to be true to yourself when you start a business. You should forego all passion and really focus on the business. And that dream inside you dies along the way. That's not absolutely true. Yes, you start a business. Yes, you make it grow, but you want to give your passion the sunlight that it needs to grow. And that's what I did with the coaching business. I remember going to Shweta, and at one point I said to her, I think I'm ready. She's like, are you ready? Are you sure? I said, yeah, but I'm not unsure. I'm not very sure, but I think I'm sure. And she was sort of the reason why I decided to take that leap of faith, which is something that we talked about earlier. So I think starting your second business is taking that leap of faith all over again. And the advice I would give someone is, if you are thinking of starting a second business, whatever that may be, the same rules apply, which is start from a place of passion, know why you're doing it, and look at the big picture. I feel that for me, starting Elevated Entrepreneur was a redo at some of the things I didn't get to do the first time around. I didn't really get to enjoy the first few years of being a founder at 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏. I was so stressed. I was so worried all the time. I had very little time for my family, and I didn't get to enjoy that time. So I figured that if I started a second business, I'd sort of get a chance to redo those things and enjoy my second time around and really enjoy the journey, because it is a journey. The point of life isn't to come out unscathed on the other end. It is to come out full of battle scars and marks and stories to tell. So I think I've missed that the first time around. And now with being a coach, I get to live out that dream, that passion, and I also get to tell the stories of how I missed those moments. And so now when I coach entrepreneurs, I tell them to remember to enjoy this moment. coming back to point, if you are starting a second business, make sure that you're doing it for the right reason. Money should never be the driving force. It needs to be passion. That's the passion that will see you through. Make sure your first business, just like your first child, is able to sustain itself. Have the right people in place, have the right systems in place, and don't delegate but don't abdicate. This is something that Varsha, my coach, taught me really well. Make sure that you can always go back to people, measure their performance, and give them candid feedback about how they're not performing, and stay on point. I'd say those would be my big pieces of advice around starting a second business.
You obviously coach a lot of entrepreneurs. Coaching is very different to mentoring in a sense that you don't really give advice. You're more kind of looking at blind spots, kind of guiding that person to the right direction that they need to be guided to. What are the common themes that you're finding with entrepreneurs when you're coaching them?
That's a great segue to talking about the difference between a coach, a mentor, and a consultant. I think an entrepreneur needs all three, and if not more. Of course, an entrepreneur needs support systems, and there can be more than one support system. So a coach is someone who's going to walk the path with you. They're not necessarily going to give you the answer because the answers lie within the entrepreneur. The coach's role is to help you find that answer, ask you some really tough questions, ask you to think, and spend some time reflecting, because then the answer becomes apparent. A consultant, on the other hand, can come in and help you solve a very specific problem, a very pointed problem, whether it's a revenue generation problem, whether it's a hiring problem. So you want to be able to bring in the right consultant at the right time. And a mentor, as you talked about, is someone who can give you advice from your industry, someone who's been there, done that. A coach may not have the same set of experiences, but a mentor typically will have the same set of experiences and give you real battle-tested, road-tested advice in your specific industry. And I think finally, the other support system a lot of entrepreneurs need is a peer group. I know that you're part of EO. A lot of founders become parts of masterminds. These are great support. This is a great support system. So figure out all of these 4 systems in your entrepreneurial journey and surround yourself with the right people. And I think your question was what
are the common themes that you obviously coach a lot of entrepreneurs, right? And kind of understanding what's the common themes that they come to you with, and what are the issues you're trying to tackle with them?
Got it. I'd say the biggest theme is around mindset. A lot of us entrepreneurs get lost in our own minds. We get into our own heads a lot. We end up thinking way too much about something. And along the way, we lose sight of the big picture. So we get lost in our own thoughts. And a big reason for that is limiting beliefs. For someone who hasn't heard this word before, there are these beliefs that we hold near and dear that seem like absolute reality, but they're absolutely not reality. But they just seem to be. One of the ones that I've had and I've struggled with is I don't deserve to be successful. I don't deserve to have many followers on Instagram or LinkedIn. And this has probably got a lot to do with me growing up and sort of the experiences that I've had as a child, as becoming an adult, and we all have our own. So it's about understanding what those limiting beliefs are and addressing them and working with them. The other big theme I find with entrepreneurs is not having clarity on what they're actually building. If there's a vision or if there's a plan, you want to keep that front and center and not get lost, because a lot of us entrepreneurs forget what we're actually building. Either we don't know what we're building or we don't have clarity on what we're building. So I would encourage entrepreneurs to think about at least a 2-year roadmap, if not a 5-year roadmap. Have an idea of what we're building, of what you're building. And a lot of common questions with that typically will be, well, I can't see out 5 years. I can't see that far. And I keep saying, find a reference model. You don't have to innovate. You don't have to figure this out from scratch. You can find a reference model, find someone who you aspire to be like, and use theirs for a bit up until you find yours. So for example, I'm building a coaching business, and 2024 and coaching has come a long way in here as we are in 24. I have a few people that I look up to that I want to emulate, even though I'm not 100% sure on what I'm actually building in the long run. I know how passionate I am about coaching. I know how passionate I am about this idea of a part-time CEO, and I know there's a phenomenal movement here. But up until then, I figure out all the moving parts. I have some people that I look up to, like Jay Klaus and Pat Flynn, and these guys have built successful coaching brands and communities that I get a lot of inspiration from. So that's theme number 2. Theme number 3 is not to be shy of asking for money. A lot of us founders have very big limiting beliefs around money, and we don't tend to be very clear with our clients, our partners, our vendors around money. So figure that out ASAP. Figure out how you can get really good at asking for money, because cash at the end of the day is going to control how successful your business is. So you may be making really good money, really good revenue, but if you don't have cash in the bank, you're going to have to make a very hard decision very soon. So get over your limiting beliefs around money. Theme number 4 is around people. A lot of us creative entrepreneurs will figure out, especially ones in creative and consulting businesses, will feel nobody can do it like I can. And that's a myth. There are lots of great people that can do exactly what you can, even better in some cases. It's about owning that truth and then going and hiring the right kind of person. Especially in the creative spaces like interior designers or branding or marketing, a lot of the founders will feel nobody can design like me, nobody can come up with campaigns like me, but that's not true. All you need to do is you need to figure out a system on how you can delegate that ability to a really good person. So I would say that make sure that you have the right person for that job and give them pointers on what you feel is creative. I think this is where a lot of creative entrepreneurs miss the boat. I'll give you an example just to make it real. If I'm running an interior design business and I'm designing houses or restaurants or spaces, of course I do a very good job at it, which is why I'm getting a lot of the business. Now it is up to me to handle this, delegate this task to somebody else on my team. And the way I would do that is I would give them feedback on every design they came back to me with. So if every time I gave my team a design to do, they'd come back to me. I'd say, look, this is what I feel is aesthetic. Make changes accordingly. So what I'm doing now by that pointed feedback is I'm training them to think like me. I'm training them to design like me. So over time, they're going to give me designs that I like. And so now I have delegated as well as transposed my creative design process onto them by giving them pointed feedback over and over again, as opposed to not giving it to them in the first place. So that would be myth number 4 or theme number 4.
Yeah, no, I like that. So in your newsletters, which I receive in my inbox and I read every time they come, you're always giving some insights on tools and apps that entrepreneurs can use in their businesses to get to that part-time CEO type vision, or just to improve productivity. Do you want to go through some of the tools and softwares that you would recommend that can help that entrepreneur get to that kind of part-time status to kind of make their operations more streamlined?
Yeah, I love this question. And as you can tell, I spend a lot of time testing new apps.
You're a techie as well.
I'm
right?
a very big techie, and I'm usually glued to my phone, not because I'm scrolling Instagram. I do that, but I'm really interested in figuring out what's the next best app that I can try out. So I'll usually download a lot of apps and try. So thanks for asking that question. You know, the app that I have absolutely fallen in love with over the last 4 years, just outside of COVID, is Notion. Notion for me is one of those systems that control my entire life today. We can get into the specifics of each app, but I use Notion as a catch-all. It's a productivity / note-taking / brainstorming, and I even use it now as a website building tool. I'll actually very quickly spin up web pages in Notion if I wanted to test run an idea. So that's app number 1.
We use Notion as well.
Yeah,
not at Alpha Pro. We use it at Taxstar. And the reason why I like it is because a lot of our email infrastructure is based on Google. And so then you kind of, you use Google Sheets and Google Docs. And being an accountant, you use Excel and Word, right? But you got to save the file somewhere, or you got to get the link or whatever. But what I like about Notion is everything's in one place, and it integrates seamlessly in on your phone as well. And it's you just literally put everything on there.
Oh man, I've pretty much built an entire operating system. It's called a life operating system. I've even given it a name. It's called DBOS. It stands for Dhiren Bhatia Operating System. It basically runs my entire life, from my coaching business to all the content I produce, down to my weekly review with my EA, down to even we have something in my family that we call a team meeting that my wife and I do every week. So we even run that family team meeting in Notion. And recently I did something really fun. I created a repository of all of the presentations that I've done in my life ever. And I put that in Notion. So now when someone comes and says, listen, Dhiren, could you help us do a presentation or could you talk about this? The first thing I go back and as I open that presentation repository, I have all the presentations stored with the covers. So it immediately gives me a place to start from as opposed to start from a blank page. And the other thing that we did in Notion that was really cool that I think a lot of families should do is put all your insurance documents and your personal documents in Notion.
You should do that as well, yeah.
So I did that recently. So all my car insurance, home insurance, life insurance, all of those policy documents are in Notion. So if ever, God forbid, something were to happen to me, I know Shweta, my wife, can get into Notion. She knows where exactly the documents are, who the point of contact is, what the policy covers. So a bit of a life hack. Notion's just not for productivity, but Notion can also be simple things like this.
There's a private section, right?
There is. There is a private section,
stuff,
yeah. And like you said, it works really well offline, on your phone. Not offline, but it works on your phone.
Yeah.
The one downside to Notion, it doesn't work offline, but it's not a big issue for me. I am usually always connected to the internet. But yeah, I think Notion is one really good system that I love and I run my entire life on. And if anybody's ever interested in checking out the life operating system, there's this phenomenal guy named August Bradley. I would love for them to check out. He has a phenomenal YouTube channel on setting up Notion for the life operating system. He's a really smart guy. I learned a lot from him and massive, massive credit. So please go check him out. So that's app number 1. I'd say app number 2 is a calendar app. You mentioned Google Docs earlier, Google Calendar. I particularly love one called Fantastical, which is a phenomenal, beautiful Mac app for calendars. Gorgeous looking, very nice, very easy, very slick. And, you know, there's some really good hacks in there. Like, for example, if I was setting up a Zoom meeting, I can integrate it with my Zoom account. So it'll automatically spin up a Zoom link inside the event.
Nice.
And everything in one step. So that's app number 2.
Does that also integrate with like the Google and the Microsoft type infrastructures as well?
It does. It'll pull your calendars from all those
nice.
places and display them in your Mac or your iPad or your iPhone. It's sadly Mac iOS only, so it's not for Android.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I am too. App number 3 would be a really good to-do manager.
Yeah,
I think a lot of us tend to keep books and pens and notes, which works for some. It doesn't work for me. I really want something that's centralized, even to the fact that my EA, Ruth, has access to my to-do list manager. So she can go in and plug things for me that I need to get done. So I will literally start my day with my calendar and then jump into my to-do list, look at things that I need to do. I use one called Things 3. Gorgeous, Mac, iOS only again, but it's a beautiful app. And really, really
I hope
slick.
we don't lose a Microsoft viewers.
Or Android.
Yeah.
But no, it's a great app. I love it. App number 4 would be some sort of CRM system.
Yeah.
As a business that's growing and I run multiple businesses, I have a CRM for both. CRM is, I'd say, ground zero for a lot of entrepreneurs in 24 and beyond, because you want to be able to capture your customer information. You want to store them somewhere. For elevated entrepreneur, I just use one in Notion. It's easy enough. It doesn't have all the fancy features of a full-on CRM system, but it does the job for me. Yeah. So I'd recommend a CRM system. And there's many. There's Pipedrive. I know you use Pipedrive.
We use Pipedrive, yeah.
It's a gorgeous app. We used it for many years. Zoho CRM. I'd say Zoho CRM is a bit complex to get started with. So if someone was thinking of starting with the CRM, I'd recommend something like Notion or Pipedrive.
Yeah, I think Notion works, yeah.
Yeah, both very, very nice.
I think one of the things that I would say about CRM is don't just use it for your business, use it for personal as well.
Oh, it's so true.
Because as a entrepreneur, you're meeting people all the time. You need to catch up with people you haven't met for, a year or so, 6 months. You want to have those dinners, those lunches, those breakfasts, those coffees, sometimes shishas, whatever it is you want to have. And it's important to keep in touch with your network. And I think a CRM as a personal person is as an individual is very important as well.
100%. I'm so glad that you touched upon that. Can I tell you a secret? I actually store my family information in my CRM as well. So I'll actually have
nice.
My uncles and my aunts all noted down there. And I'll remember to tag myself to say, call this person or call this uncle, call this aunt. Not because I don't want to call them, but it's just life gets so busy.
Yeah.
So I love what you shared. CRM is great even for personal relationships. and scheduling some friendships, time for friendships, time for family into your CRM. I know some people may not like the idea, but as a good CRM can do that for you.
Yeah, 100%.
I'd say the app after that would be an email marketing system. So you talked about my newsletters earlier. I use ConvertKit, which is now called Kit. Phenomenal app, really easy to use. I think a lot of entrepreneurs think about marketing and they get lost in the HubSpots and the drips of the world. But I feel there are some really good apps that can do one job and they do it really well. Kit is a good example. ConvertKit is now good. Now Kit is a good example. ActiveCampaign and all of these are great email marketing tools. So I have an email marketing tool. MailChimp, another good example of an email marketing tool. And completely off business, there's one app that recently has been a game changer for me. It's called Timeshifter. It's an app that allows you to travel across the world without any jet lag. So what they do is they will ask you for your flight information, and literally you can plug in the flight number and it'll understand your routing, and it'll give you recommendations on how you should sleep 48 hours prior to your flight, so that when you get to your destination, you're not jet lagged. So how much coffee should you have? How much should you sleep? How much should you eat? What should you drink on the plane? It's phenomenal. I've had great success and come out on the other end with zero jet lag. So if you're someone who travels a lot,
you go to Canada, right? So.
I travel a lot. I use that app religiously. Fantastic app. Timeshifter. Highly recommend it.
What about ChatGPT? How does that rank?
Oh, I'd say it's become such an important part of my life that I don't even think about it.
It's not even an app anymore. It's like
it's second nature, right?
Yeah,
it's second nature.
Another arm.
Yeah, and I think we're just beginning to see the power of ChatGPT unfold itself. I feel a lot of us have already played with it. But if someone is looking at ChatGPT, I'd ask them to take a bit of courses, do some learning around prompting, because that's really the new sort of frontier. Yeah. You really need to get good at prompting, and there's some amazing resources on prompting. And also explore building custom GPT. We in fact did an event in my community, in the part-time CEO community, on AI. And we talked about this idea of custom GPT. So a custom GPT is nothing but your own, very own chat GPT that does things for you on a preset level of things that you've already asked it to do. And all of this can be done without any coding. So you go into chat GPT, you go into my GPT, you give it some instructions, all text-based, and it'll then start to perform the same action again and again. And so it makes it very easy for you to do whatever you want with ChatGPT, because this is now very specific in what it's designed to do. So you don't have to repeat the same instructions again.
Nice.
Cheap, easy, and well worth the money if you're looking to invest into learning a little bit about ChatGPT. But so true, it's become so quickly, it's become so ubiquitous that you don't even think about it anymore.
Nice. It's just like it's basically a tab on your internet browser.
Yeah.
So
likewise.
Like Google. Google's not an app. You just Google stuff, and
likewise.
ChatGPT is the same now.
I use another one called Cloud. Really nice. It's by Anthropic. So it's the same LLM, same large language model like ChatGPT. The same idea, but it's a different model. And so it's more personable. It's more nicer to talk to. So I'd also encourage people to check out Cloud. It wasn't available here for a long time, but it is now.
Nice.
And actually, while we're talking about AI, can I make one more recommendation?
Yeah, of course.
I recently went to Virgin and I picked up this device called Ploud. Very easy, very much rhymes with cloud. PLAUD. Ploud.ai is the website. It's a hardware-based voice recorder that you can put in a conversation just like this. It records the entire conversation and then will transcribe it and summarize using ChatGPT, all within like 10 minutes or less.
Nice.
So it's really good for people that do face-to-face meetings. Physical meetings. It even can record phone calls. So if you're having a really important discussion with your client and you don't want to take notes, just flip the switch, record the call, and within 10 minutes, you'll have a transcription and a summary through ChatGPT. Fantastic tool.
Nice. I guess you have to get permission when you call someone.
Yeah, I usually will preface the conversation by saying, hey, is it okay if I record this conversation? I'd love to make notes, and this will allow me to. So that makes it easy. Of course, if it's in an in-person conversation, same rules apply.
Yeah, they know you're going to...
Yeah, I usually put it in the middle and I say, hey, look, is it okay if we record this conversation? But please do always get permission and consent.
So Dhiren, before we wrap up, are there any exciting projects that you're working on? You know, what are you working on right now? I know you've got Cloudscape, you've got the Elevated Entrepreneur, part-time CEO. And how can people reach you?
Thank you for asking, Rehan. I'm so excited. There's always new things that I'm working on. One of the things that I'm doing right now is building the community behind the part-time CEO movement. So there's a community is called Part-Time CEO Circle. It's a community designed specifically for creative entrepreneurs who are looking for a support system where they can learn, they can ask questions, they can grow together with other creative entrepreneurs, and they can find information on elevatedentrepreneur.co or just send me a message. Happy to share more information. And that's been something that's consuming a lot of my time because I'm so passionate about creating this support system. I wish I had this support system when I started my business, and I'm so happy that this exists today. And yeah, it's been a game changer for me, and I love it. And it's also now about building this concept into an actual product. So I'm figuring out this system called Circle, which is where the community is hosted. So yeah, it's a really exciting time. We do a lot of events within the Part-Time CEO Circle. We do breakfast events, we do coffee meetups. So, you know, putting the whole thing together, bringing people together, networking, and actually learning from each other, it's been something that I'm really enjoying to do. And you can find me on LinkedIn under the handle of Dhiren. Do we use handles on LinkedIn? Is that still a thing, or is it just?
I haven't got a clue.
Well, on LinkedIn, I'm at Dhiren Bhatia, and on Instagram, I'm Dhiren BH, and I write a newsletter called the 𝗵𝗶𝗺𝗍. So if anybody runs a creative business and is looking for strategies on becoming a part-time CEO, I would love for them to visit bullet.elevatedentrepreneur.co and subscribe to get my best strategies.
We'll add it on the show notes, so
Thank
then
you.
Our viewers can find it as well. Just want to say thank you very much for joining me today. It's been an amazing session with you. So many nuggets, so much information out there that you've given us. So just want to say thank you, and keep doing the great things that you're doing.
Thank you, Ryan. It's been an absolute pleasure being here. You're a wonderful, wonderful host. So thank you for having me and for allowing me to share all of this knowledge and wisdom. And I hope it helps your listeners.
It's helping me. So, cool. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Alphapreneurs podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe and give us a 5-star rating and a review. Your feedback is appreciated. For show notes and more, check out the link in the description and connect to me directly on LinkedIn and search for Rehan Aleem. See you in the next episode.